Coming up on this episode, I delve deep into why I started and have a real-time realization on what inspired this podcast and who inspired it that I didn't even know about. And yeah, it gets deep on the back end of this pod, so let's get into it. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Piercers podcast, and I'm your host, John. We've made it to episode 100, and as a little bit of kind of insight into myself and just how I've changed on the pod and outside of the pod, I want to look back and see why I started, what's changed in me since I've started, if I'm glad I'm started, and if I'm going to continue, more importantly. So I suppose the easiest place to start is why I started. And it's obviously something I've spoken about before, but it's something that has and will change over time. So when I originally started, I wanted to talk about life in all of its curiosity, from all of my curiosities and in all of its variabilities, and not just from my perspective, but from everybody's perspective. I think everybody views the world differently. And since starting the pod, that feeling's been exaggerated, and I talk to people more about it, I think about it more. So the amount I'm present in life is a lot more. And it plays out in life in other aspects as well. So once I started creating the content, the type of content I consumed myself changed. And it kind of dominoed to where now, nearly a year later, the content that I consume is to better the content that I produce. Instead of just consuming content to escape life or kill time. And that's improved who I am as a person. It's broadened my mind. It's woken me up again to life and people and just different forms of information, different variations of information, different types of information. I started going into books again, and well, more honestly, like for the first time properly, I've started going into books. And for my own interest, not because somebody recommended it or somebody said I should read it or a curriculum said I had to read it or whatever else, but just to kind of pique my own curiosities or answer some questions that I have, or maybe to entertain myself. So that was a big change from starting the pod. Once I created content myself, it heavily affected the content that I consumed. And then obviously what you consume tends to have an effect on the person that you are. So when I've changed the type of things that I'm consuming, I've changed the person that I am. I've changed my focuses in life, and I think it's for the better. So I'm definitely glad I started. In terms of the early stages and is it what I set out to do? Probably not. Like, I don't talk to people as much. It's definitely far more a solo thing. Don't get me wrong, I try to get Dave on as much as our schedules can allow. We both are down to pod as much as we can. But we also have our main lives that we live as well. So it gets hard to juggle. But by doing it for this long, it's given us that opportunity to adjust our lives and find ways where we can do episodes together more often. And that's another thing where it's like, my life is very busy and can be very hectic. So having that kind of time with a friend, with a bro, like whether it be work or messing around or talking about life or whatever it is, that's always valuable. So more of that helps my life feel better. And again, it's more of a positive kind of paying forward onto my life in an indirect way, where it's just not what we set out to do is kind of enjoy time more. Well, it is actually. Like, I suppose me and Dave, we're both on this journey to enjoy our lives. and enjoy as much of our lives as we can. But obviously this is part of one of our passion projects, and trying to build that to a place where it is more part of a main part of our life, but at the same time it gives us time together as bros, so we can chat, we can vent and just have a laugh, catch up or whatever else, and that brings value to both of our lives and makes both of us feel better. And that's a kind of indirect that's come from the pod. And when the pod gets bigger and it becomes more interacting with new people and other people, other podcasters and other members of the public and anybody that wants to have a chat or whatever else, that adds a whole new variability and more value to me and to the viewers and the world. Like I say, I think everybody has their value to bring, and that course has not changed since starting the pod, and I don't want it to ever change. Whether the pod stays small or gets big, I don't ever want to limit who I talk to. If somebody piques my interest, I want to talk to them, whether they're somebody big or somebody small. Like, everybody has value, and that's part that is going to stay consistent in the pod, but is also something that is taking time to grow. Like, I have had a few more people reach out and say they're willing to come on or whatever else, but again, busy lives, we've got schedules and there's a lot to juggle. But when you've been consistent and when you stay consistent for time, you allow time and you allow room for these things to happen. So I fully believe and know that more episodes will come with new people, more episodes will come with me and Dave, and hopefully it'll get to a point where we have a common episode of me and Dave, and then maybe a guest episode of me and somebody else, or a guest episode of Dave and somebody else, and kind of really bring in a lot more perspectives. But if I would have stopped before now or even after now, it doesn't allow room for that to happen. So I have to keep going in order to allow room for that. And that gives me purpose, which again indirectly pays on to my life, which makes me feel more valuable, which makes me feel more needed. And it's not to say that anybody's asking for these episodes, but it brings out that point in me where they benefit me more than probably anybody else. Like I said on the previous episode, like, when we tend to feel underappreciated or underwanted, we have to look at ourselves. So once I started looking at myself and asking myself those questions, and I started doing things that I would appreciate me for, and if that's the only person that's going to appreciate me, fair play, I'll start there. But then you have to look at your actions and how they pay forward. Like, there is going to be a time when there may be some information amongst one of these videos that is valuable to somebody, and fair play. But inevitably, they help me. It is always going to be a selfish venture. It's my life. But it helps me think about people a lot more, and it helps me think about my effect on the world and the world's effect on me, the type of world that I want to live in and the type of world that's out there. I think we all kind of live in these microcosms where it's like, the world you know is all that you know, and you think that's all that there is of the world, and you paint pictures accordingly. Like, when we see things in media, or we're told stories or whatever else, where we witness life vicariously through another medium that isn't ourselves, it's easy to misinterpret it, or like a game of whispers. Do you know what I mean? Like, eventually the message gets convoluted, or it gets changed and misinterpreted, or whatever else. Like, such happens with life. So really, the only world that you know is the world that you've experienced yourself. So being present in the world and experiencing more of it is only going to broaden your own horizons. And that's the effect the pod's had on me. I think about far more of the world now than I did before. I'll try not to go too off topic, but just after my mum died and the little one was just turning 1 and life was hectic and everything else, I very much went and shut down in my own bubble. and it was batten down the hatches and weather the storm. There was a lot of things that I had to sort out in life, a lot of adjustments to make in life, and a lot of those adjustments I'm still making, and a lot of things I'm still trying to put in place, and da 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 da. Again, everything takes time, but putting in the work then has allowed me to feel a lot freer now. And now I can look back at those times, and I can look back at those parts of my life and see where the value was. Like it was a difficult time, but I got through it and I learned a lot from it. And there's always going to be difficult times in life, but it shouldn't stop you from starting something new. Like, I started this pod shortly after my mum died, and I'd have loved to have picked her brain and talked about life with her more so than I did when I was younger. But we spoke about life, and she made me very curious about life. So maybe she planted the seed for me to start this pod way back when. Maybe. But starting this in that time, it was a time when I thought about what she left behind and what I would leave behind. And everything kind of dominoed from there. And now, like, I really wish I could have a conversation with her. It's actually her anniversary today. Not that they'll be coming out on the same day as her anniversary, but the day that I'm recording this is her anniversary. And I do think about her a lot. And she probably is a lot of the reason why I started this. And like I say, she definitely gave me a lot of my curiosity, and she allowed me to see the world in a very unique way, where not everything is as it seems. So my mum was severely disabled, but she had a life that would beg to differ. And I suppose that's why I see the value in all types of life, where just because somebody's cast a judgment, it doesn't mean that it is so. Like, if she would have listened to the people or the doctors in her early years, she would have never walked, she would have never ridden horses, she would have never lived the full life that she did. She would have never had children, she would have never got married, she would have never lived to the age that she did. So, to think about the value that her life brought to the world, but yet so many people dismissed in its early stages, that pays forward into the pod in a way that I only just realised. And I'll forever be grateful for. But yeah, that did take me off topic. It is so great to see the world that she helped me see. Like, inevitably I wouldn't be here for her. This wouldn't be here without her. My daughter wouldn't be here without her. And that domino will topple so much further into the world than she got to see. But it doesn't make it any less valuable. And that's why I think, looking back now, that talking about life and the things that we go through in life are so valuable. Like, there is so much that goes unsaid for one reason or another. Whether people feel ashamed, or whether they feel like they're uncomfortable, or they're not in a safe space. People ball so much up that just needs or should be let go of. And grief and longing for somebody or missing somebody is something that I probably struggle to talk about, but there is value in it. There is. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. Well, I can attribute to that. I've said it before, but I understand my mum far more in her passing than I ever did in her lifetime. I've taken more time to think about her life now, more than I did beforehand. And I've learned more from it. And I suppose that really is why I started the pod, because I see the value that her life brought and how strong she was. But yet, she only got to witness such a small part of the world. There's such a massive world out there. And so many of us are doing that to ourselves. And I do it to myself. Like there's so much of the world to see. But life gets busy. But life is short. So don't get too busy to live life. There's so much to experience, to do, to explore in this world. Don't get caught up in the same loops and cycles and live the same life wasting away. Like, let your life flourish. Live life for the people that come before you. Live life for the people that come after you. There's so much to be lived. There's so much to do, witness and see. Go out there and experience it. And that's hopefully where it will tie back into the pod and make this a place where we can talk about life. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. Because that's what makes up life. Life isn't always rosy. Life isn't always great. But it's not always bad either. Like I say, that for as much good as there is in the world, for as much grief as there is in the world, there's so much love, happiness, joy, and everything else. It's just down to what you want to experience, what you choose to witness. I could choose to sit and miss my mum and live life feeling an absence. Yet I live life feeling like she's always with me. I talk to her all of the time. Like, I know life goes on. I know there's far more to the world than we experience. That's the outlook that I choose to have on life. And that's changed and will change over time. But this pod is something that makes me face a side of myself that I don't always give myself time to face. And it's really important to give yourself that time to face it. There's so much growth that can come from yourself and so much growth that can be had. Don't be afraid to put the work in on yourself. Don't be afraid to have the difficult conversations or talk about the awkward things. Because that's where the bonds are made. That's the important stuff. Not the, oh, I had this for dinner, or I went to this party or that party. Like, sit down and have a real conversation with somebody. And then you'll make a real connection with somebody. And you'll learn from other people as much as they learn from you. But you have to get your head out of the sand. You have to put your head back into life and actually realize you are a living being that is out there to have your own experiences, not just live life vicariously through others. So go out there and live life. Start your own podcast, start your own journey, go on your own adventure, and give yourself the time. Don't set out and think it's going to pay off on day one. Don't think it's going to pay off on day 100. Give it time, because you'll constantly keep learning the longer you go on. But you have to start. You have to start that journey. If not for anybody else, but for yourself. I think I'm going to leave it there for this one. I hope this has been a good episode, and I hope this helps some people. The seed for this episode is going to be, for God's sake, start something. Even if it's start to believe in yourself. Start there. Start having a bit of faith in yourself. Start a project. Start a new hobby. Start whatever it is. Just start living life for yourself and not vicariously through others. All the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.